Professor Hiroyuki Hino.
Could you just start? Yeah. Okay. Your Excellency, Dr. William Ruto, the President of the Republic of Kenya, distinguished guests, Kenya. I'm most grateful for this opportunity to speak with you at this conference, which launches a nationwide consultation to forge consensus on a vision beyond 2030. Your Excellency, I'm deeply gratified that you continue to honor a conversation you had with the late Right Honorable Raila Odinga only a few weeks before his untimely departure. Immediately after that conversation, the former Prime Minister called me. He was full of hope. The Prime Minister said, that President Ruto and the former Prime Minister had agreed that it was imperative to take a fresh look at where Kenya stood. How difficult it was for ordinary Kenyans to earn a decent living, how government could help them better. Your Excellency, you and the Prime Minister agreed that Kenya needed a bold vision that would inspire and unite all Kenyans, irrespective of their political or ethnic affiliation. The vision should be prepared by experts who are independent of government and trusted by the public, and with full participation of all stakeholders. For this purpose, Your Excellency, you decided to reconstitute the National Economic and Social Council as an independent body. It was indeed a special privilege to be included in that conversation. Mr. President, thank you. For Raila's legacy, and as a Kenyan at heart, I'll be honored to assist Kenya in this endeavor. Your Excellency, I'm told that many Kenyans are skeptical. They believe that Singapore is too high a target for Kenya to reach in this generation. I agree that reaching Singapore's level of development in the next 30 to 40 years will be difficult. Singapore's income per Singapore's level of income per person last year exceeded $80,000. This in Kenya, the income was just over $2,000. Huge difference. But I would say this to the skeptics. Kenyans possess personal attributes that can power extraordinary growth. The Asian miracle was driven in important part by the strength of its people. Hard work, motivation, discipline, and cooperation. During my 5 years, as economic advisor to the Prime Minister, and later a senior advisor to the then Deputy President, William Ruto, I often visited the Amref Dagaroti Child in Need project. There, children who once worked on streets received compassionate educational, medical, and psychological support, along with vocational training and opportunities in theater, music, and the arts. I was deeply impressed. Those young people were entrepreneurial, energetic, and highly motivated. And after all, they were happy despite the hardship they endured. Scientific evidence support. See, next page. Scientific evidence supports my favorable impression of Kenyan children. Since 2008, my colleagues, Professors Jennifer Lansford of Duke University and Professor Paul Oburu of Maseno University, have been studying 100 children and their parents in Kisumu using well-established methods of developmental psychology. Their findings show that Kenyan children are more optimistic and persevering than their peers in several developing and developed countries. Kenyan children demonstrate greater hope and confidence in the future, as well as greater determination to pursue their goals. Kenyan children also do well in 3 other dimensions of flourishing. Number 1, engagement. That is, being involved deeply in activities. Number 2, connectedness. That is the feeling loved, supported, and valued. And happiness. That is a great general sense of cheerfulness and contentment with life. But not all is well, of course. Kenyan children perform less well than their peers in self-management, what psychologists call self-regulation. This means they have greater difficulty staying focused on long-term goals, managing emotions under stress, exercising self-discipline, and adapting to change. Strengthening these abilities can raise productivity, growth, and employment. I believe this study that is conducted by my colleagues will shed light on how learning and socialization shape personal attributes, entrepreneurial mindset, and attitude toward informality, and how these in turn influence employment and other livelihood choices. Although this is a small pilot study, we hope that its finding will help us recommend policies to Kenya to strengthen the learning and socialization of Kenyan children and thus improve their prospect as young adults. Your Excellency, economic growth and large investment projects are important. However, ultimately, a government is judged by how well it improves the economic and social well-being of every citizen. Kenya has made a significant stride. In the last 20 years, average household income per person increased from $2.24 to $3.50 per day. That is an important improvement. Access to electricity, clean cooking fuels, safe drinking water, and improved sanitation rose by 37 percentage points to 60% on average. Again, important progress. The share of children not stunted improved from 70 to 80%. These are important progress. Yet, frankly, for a country of Kenya's stature, this record is disappointing. In household income, childhood nutrition, basic services and learning, Kenya trails Vietnam, which used to trail Kenya by far, and at par is broadly comparable to Ghana, and Kenya can do better. Suppose Kenya aims to reach Singapore's current levels in these 4 indicators of economic well-being, and by its centenary 2063. Is this as implausible as many Kenyans assume? Is it that difficult? You should forget, give up. In my view, Kenya can reach or surpass 3 of the 4 goals. First, the remaining cases of stunting are concentrated in the south area. With concerted action, stunting could be virtually eliminated within 10 years. That I'm confident of. I recognize it may be more appropriate to use the broader measure of public health as indicators of Kenyan well-being, but for this purpose, that I chose the stunting to highlight the plight of these underprivileged in those areas. That's why this indicator was chosen. Second, Kenya's harmonized test score, HTS, a globally accepted measure of learning, was 26% below Kenya's level last year. Singapore's level last year. To close this gap by 2063, annual improvement of only 0.63% is needed. This is achievable if Kenya continues to improve the quality of primary and secondary education. It's doable. The third, in Singapore, access to basic services is universal. But only about 60% in Kenya. It's a still big gap. Reaching 100% by 2063 will require annual growth of 1.3%. This is also achievable. It's achievable because access to clean cooking fuel is the weakest area of those services, but new technologies could expand this access very rapidly. So it's certainly doable. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the fourth target, that is to raise the average household income to Singapore's level, is much, much harder. This would require income per person to grow by more than 10% per year for 35 years. That is a very tall order. So what should Kenya do? So Kenya must accelerate economic growth first. It should tighten fiscal policy, increase investment in infrastructure, on essential services, and bring public debt under control. It must also continue to support private enterprises. Reliance on private sector has been the hallmark of Singapore's development. These are the basics that has to continue. But even if this is done, without additional impetus, growth is likely to hit a plateau in Kenya. Over the last several decades, most middle-income countries have failed to cross the high-income level threshold. And this is the phenomenon known as the middle-income trap. It's hard to cross the high-income threshold. And Kenya will face an additional challenge. International trade has become less predictable. Support for many UN agencies has weakened, and development assistance (ODA) has fallen sharply. So it is more difficult. Against these headwinds, Kenya would do well to achieve and sustain annual per person income growth of 5%. Kenya would do well, 5% growth. If we assume population to grow by 1% per year, this translates to growth of GDP, economic measures as a whole, of about 6.5% a year. If achieved, this would be a remarkable, if it's achieved, yes, a remarkable achievement indeed, if it could be done. But reaching Singapore's current income level requires another 5 percentage point income growth every year. That's hard. In other words, Kenya needs a quantum leap to a substantially higher growth trajectory. This requires bold and transformative change. Kenyan flower, thank you. The Kenyan flower industry is an example. It illustrates the transformative change we are looking for. By adopting new floriculture technologies and faster global transport network, the flower industry became most competitive globally and achieved a huge growth in its revenue. So there is an example of a Kenya needs similar transformative changes throughout its economy and society. What could bring the transformative changes we desire? Answers to this question should emerge from the national dialogue and the work of committee of experts that I hope the President will constitute. At this stage, I would offer a few observations. First, AI, artificial intelligence, will no doubt transform economies and societies, many aspects of it. But now, at this stage, we do not yet know exactly how they will transform. So this is an area that we should draw on leading global experts as Kenya develops a new vision. Second, Kenyans could become among the world's most entrepreneurial, hardworking, and competitive people if their children's productive attributes are fully nurtured. In my view, this requires a review of the formal education system in Kenya now. The scope of education and learning should be expanded beyond cognitive skills to include broader self-management and other capabilities in Kenya education that have been done. Third, inequality in Kenya is high. Kenya is an unequal economy. The poorest 20% of Kenyans receive only 5% of national income, whereas the richest 20% receive one half. Richest 5%, 20% income, poorest 5%, only 5%. Narrowing this imbalance would raise income of ordinary household and bring Kenya closer to the income growth trajectory to Singapore we are looking for. Three possible remedies deserve considerations this inequalities. One is to increase government support to people in need of help. In Singapore, the government transfers about $7,300 per person per year. In Kenya, guess how much? $220. Kenya can increase this amount. The other possible remedy is to embrace small informal enterprises rather than dismissing them. Professor Charles Piot, my colleague and I, conducted a study of informal enterprises in Kenya, Ghana, and Nigeria. The study shows informal enterprises can grow fast, especially when owners' informal characters are combined with informal ways of doing business. They can grow fast. They do not necessarily need subsidized government loans. Privately financed microfinance can work well. Inequality should be a central element of the national consultation. Finally, corruption damages the economy and weakens the social fabric. Curbing corruption will be a truly transformative for Kenya. Kenyans often say that government tolerates corruption, and public officials are rarely prosecuted. I agree, where there is sufficient evidence, those responsible must be brought before the courts. But citizens also have an important role to play. When citizens witness or learn of corruption, they can expose them through social media. As we saw 2 years ago, social media movements can be a powerful force for accountability. So Kenyans, citizens should take active role in curbing corruption as well. I welcome the conflict of interest law and electronic procurement system that was introduced as part of broader governance reforms supported by the World Bank. Priority now is to enforce those measures fully and consistently, and citizens should help by staying vigilant and demanding accountability. To conclude, the national consultation launched today will be a major asset to setting the stage for transforming Kenya to a first world economy. In this speech, I've highlighted 4 themes for the national consultation: childhood learning, support for the poor, micro-business development, and the fight against corruption. I am confident that other important ideas will emerge through this national process. Ladies and gentlemen, Raila dreamed of a new Kenya where ordinary citizens enjoy a decent life and look to the future with full of hope. His dream, Raila's dream, was to empower young Kenyans to live their dreams. Your Excellency, you shared the Raila's dream and had a deal with them. And that deal is a new vision. Your Excellency, you have triggered the curiosity of Kenyans. Stay the course to the end, please. And to the people of Kenya, remember this: Singapore is reachable. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.